Well, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're still discussing the KCPE results and the impact of it all and what it took to get there, plus who has played a role in ensuring that the students came out tops. And we've seen a decline in the number of, actually the highest mark has reduced from 455 in 2017 all the way to 428 in 2021. Now, still with Mboko Milemba, who's the chairperson, Kupet, and also Janet Ouko, former education CC Nairobi, and Kennedy Echesa, who's a lecturer and education expert as well. And Mboko, let me come to you on this one. When 1.2 million candidates sit an exam and only 320 have been caught with irregularities, isn't that evidence that cheating has been dealt with?
I had spoken on the issue of cheating earlier, and I said that there's every reason to congratulate the minister and everybody in the education sector and the Kenya National Examination Council that the numbers of students who are now caught or involved in cheating are far much lower than it was 10 years ago. We were here before, and we would talk of thousands of students caught in cheating, and some of them would completely lose their exams. Some of them would be told to go and repeat, and even no schools would admit them for repeating. So there's a real compliment that since the time of both Matiang'i and Magoha, cheating has reduced. We must remember that, you know, this cheating is something that is because of the value we have put on education. You know, Kenyans revere education just like Americans revere their economy. So if you have any information about examinations, then you will find that everybody will be willing to pay money to actually get the examinations. So we must reduce the value, the reverence that has been put in examination and passing of examinations, so that some normal, general feeling and understanding comes in the examination and education sector. And I'm hoping that CBC will bring this. I'm just hoping so. So that not everything will be just around examinations alone. That passing of examinations is everything. You know, we are still working in the model of the whole education system that was generated by economists like Michael Todaro in the economics of East Africa, where they put a lot of emphasis on education. Education was a sacred cow. That so many vijana, mwisho wa masomo mtapata kazi nzuri, that model must end. So once we do that, which I'm hoping CBC will bring, then we shall be able to reduce this hullabaloo about everybody going forward. But in your own assessment, is CBC heading in the right direction? Before I come to that, I would also want to say that I also loved something else from the minister yesterday, that, Janet, you'll agree with me, for a long time we used to struggle that, hey, all these students whom we want to send away because they were involved in cheating, why can't we give them supplementary papers? I know it's almost coming in. I heard him almost allude that a student who was found cheating in one paper will just lose that particular paper and will get 0. I don't know if you had it the same way I had it. And therefore will go to a school equivalent to the marks that he has gotten. You know, that's very good. Education is not supposed to be cutthroat process, whereby we completely kill you. So I think we are very happy, I must be very happy, that we are going into a process where we can actually see how to deal with this cheating without necessarily completely killing the life of the learner. Remember that education is supposed to be compulsory for all learners within a certain bracket of age up to Form 4. So then, is CBC going the right direction? Is one thing. But, you know, we are still grappling with the belief in CBC for many players. So let me put a statement on the belief that CBC is the correct way to go. A few people are still doubting whether we should have CBC or not. When I speak on CBC, I'll tell you this is the best thing that has happened to us. I know there are serious challenges that you'll face in terms of infrastructure, money involved, and everything else, teacher-student ratio, the classes, and so on and so forth. But this is the best thing that has come about. So that education is not only for passing exams, but education is for you to survive in the atmosphere, in the environment that where you are going to, and see how you can get employment with that particular sector. You can innovate, invent yourself, and this is a very good system. Echesa, there seems to be, Mboko believes that CBC is a good system, but by Nancy Masharia's own admission, they were admitting 5,000 teachers annually, but there's still a lack of 114,581. It is now that they're building 10,000 classrooms, which Magoha says that they will ensure is done at a cost of 788,000 each, because they already have the 10 billion shillings. Are we simply just putting the cart before the horse?
I'm surprised that the chairperson of the teachers of this country will make such a very dangerous remark that CBC is the way to go at this time and moment when every teacher that Honorable Mboko represents does not understand what CBC is all about. And these are the persons that are supposed to implement the process. And for the last time, I want to use a very simple school to demonstrate why CBC is not understood by anyone. We have a school called Butere Girls in Kakamega County, national school. The current Form 1s of Butere Girls are 718 Form 1s. The Ministry of Education has given Butere Girls 2 classrooms, the capacity 90, 45, 45. If Butere Girls Form 1s are 719, chances are, if the grade 7 children are going to be admitted to Butere Girls, they'll be about 900. Because Form 1 numbers keep going up. If you're admitting 800 at Butere Girls next year, and you have only 2 classrooms that you've been added, that can only take up to 90 students, where are you going to take the rest of over 600 girls who will go to Butere Girls? And if the rest of the students will go to Butere Primary, of course you'll have 2 free classrooms at Butere Primary. You will take another 90. Who will be teaching? Will the teachers of Butere Girls be leaving Butere Girls to go and teach? How can we celebrate a process that we don't know? One, who will implement this curriculum at that level? Grade 7, grade 8, grade 9. Are we going to have primary school teachers joining Omboko's team and teaching these classes? Or we are going to ask Form 1 and 2 teachers to come and teach? No one has trained these fellas. And remember, we do not have a period that will take 2 months break or 3 months break from our academic calendar to go and train our teachers who will be teaching the transiting students. And Nancy has admitted that they are going to employ 5,000 teachers. These teachers are not going to be employed specifically to deal with the CBC. These are teachers that are employed by TSC annually to replace those teachers who have exited service through natural attrition. Why are we making an attempt to implement an impossibility? We've been talking about these impossibilities, and I am happy that January is here with us. We are going to witness this. We can't implement CBC in its present form. And for the first time, I agree with Kenya Kwanza. And Omboko Milemba, the current and future MP for Emuhaya, is here with us. Kenya Kwanza knows that you cannot implement CBC as it is. And that is why they have promised to do away with CBC as a matter of priority, should they assume office in September. Okay. Perhaps I should say God forbid, because I support the other.
I don't know.
I must come in very quickly and say that, hey, how would you reduce CBC as a curriculum to simply a case study of Butere, where we have 2 classes and we could get another 2 classes somewhere, and the students will be coming out, will be too many, and because the classes will not be available, then CBC cannot work. Hey, get serious, brother. This is a curriculum that is holistic. And CBC is not only based on the number of classes that will be available. Yes, I agree that the classes are not enough. And we are pushing for more classes to be built, and we want more classes to be put in place. Yeah. We are pushing not for 5,000 teachers to be employed, but 100,000 teachers to be employed. We are pushing currently not only training on CBC, but also training on TPD, and we have factored money in the budget. A motion moved by Mboko Milemba seated here that let training for teachers in TPD be done by the government of Kenya, and 2 billion is in the budget. So we don't reduce the entire curriculum to episodes and that you see in a place like just Butere or Esirulo or Kilingili, which has performed very well in my constituency. You must look at this as a holistic thing. That why do we want CBC? Yeah. It's a policy issue that we want to move from a certain type of education system which is producing a certain type of candidates who will be looking for jobs outside there and not getting the jobs, to a system where these candidates can be more innovative and even get jobs and do more practical jobs within the system. Okay. So that's the holistic policy and others that I may have not mentioned. So don't narrow it to just a matter of we don't have enough teachers. Teachers must be employed by the government of Kenya, not 5,000, but 100,000.
Yeah.
Don't narrow it to blocks of
brick and mortar.
Because this can be provided and want the government of Kenya to, and after all, let Professor Shiwani saw this coming, that education is moving outside the four walls of a classroom. Education must not just be in the blocks. Okay. And you saw it during COVID, brother, that we can have this education outside. And that's why the private schools have done better than the public schools, because they have access to education. So talk about CBC holistically, not just challenges. I know it has challenges, and let's possibly just deal with the challenges. But this is a good model.
Okay. Janet?
Well, Wakili, I really pity some of the issues that you're saying here. First and foremost, 5,000 teachers do not die every year. Omboko is here to confirm. That could have been declared a national disaster. So the employment of TSC of 5,000 is because of the policy of free education for all and the open policy by government for all. And also towards preparations, for CBC. So really it's not that TSC replaces those that die, and it is why the 5,000 every year is an attempt to prepare, the sector to receive these children. And I also want to draw you to statistics today to just demonstrate to you what we mean when we're talking about CBC. As we speak now, we are seeing celebrations about 11,000 children who got 400 marks and above. But we are not thinking about the 350,000 children that got 199 marks and below. Those are the children for which we really must have CBC. The children that may not have been very gifted in academics, but we just judged them based on their ability to tick A, B, or C, but we did not wonder, what else are these children good at? So today, we have given a child a verdict of 120 marks. And that child will carry that verdict throughout their life because they will not be eligible for Alliance, they'll not be eligible for Mangu, they'll probably be somewhere in some day school. But that is not their full potential. CBC is about exploiting a child's full potential without necessarily looking at how did you perform in chemistry, how about I wasn't good in chemistry, but I'm a very good artist, I can draw, I can do everything else. How about giving a verdict that is wholesome so that every child's potential is utilized? I think that is what CBC is all about. Yeah. I really say that you're a very bad campaigner for One Kenya Alliance because you just decampaigned the whole thing because the parents have been giving us the feedback. Parents are saying CBC is a good thing. No, he just spoke for you and saying that you are going to abolish CBC. I'm just saying, beware, you have a very bad campaigner here. Parents are saying CBC is good because they can see how their children are turning out to be. And the only challenges that are coming and the challenges that have been dealt with, when we began, we saw private schools, every day saying you have to buy all these numerous, number of books. And I remember personally speaking to the CS and saying, is this the position? And the CS came out and said, no, CBC is not about buying every new thing every other day. It's just about the practical bit. When you're asked for an apron, it does not mean that your parent goes to the supermarket and buys the apron. It meant that look in-house, around the home, what item. There could be a gunia that you could make because the concept is to show children about what an apron can do. It's not necessarily who brings the best. And Nairobi parents, we like competing about who will bring the most expensive, who will bring the best thing. That is not what CBC was meant to do. It's actually to prepare learners and to also involve the parents. I know parents here have worried, have cried about their over-involvement in this. But I think a few years ago, we were saying parents are so detached from the education system. Now they are telling us they need to push back a little because of how they are engaged. And that engagement does more than the learning. It also provides an opportunity for the child and the parent to bond and for the parent also to understand what the child is going through.
Okay.
Right of reply.
Something you just brought up, in fact, I'll give you a right of response right now.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Very well. One, I must say, Trevor, when I talk about Butere girls, it's not a case study of Butere girls. Butere girls is a reflection of what is going on throughout the country. And I challenge my friend Omboko Milemba and my sister Janet to tell me a school in this country. Let us use their case study. Tell us school A in Muhaya, school B in Kasarani, where Janet is going to present them in Parliament, has these facilities, they have done this and that. When we say we do not have facilities, there are no facilities at all. You cannot invite students, and because we want practical lessons and that we are moving out of class, and have them under the tree. It's a raining season today. So classrooms and infrastructure is critical to the implementation of a curriculum. Number two, Omboko. Number two, about teachers who exit service, I said through natural attrition, it could be through retirement, it could be through death, it could be through resignation. And I asked myself, when was the last time TSC posted a teacher at Mahola Primary School, where I come from? When was the last time TSC sent? Are you even aware that posting of teachers in this country is another form of cartel? Some schools keep receiving teachers year in, year out. The other schools are understaffed. We have a school in Nandi with one TSC teacher. And we have many schools, even where Omboko comes from. Omboko schools that have been registered recently.
Trevor,
they just have the principal and the deputy principal. Why are we imposing a very expensive menu on a village of paupers?
We are likely to lose the main motion. You know, we cannot come here. I woke up very early.
Yes.
And I just lost time because I thought it was 6:50. I was traveling from the village yesterday night.
Yes.
We cannot just come here to argue about whether there are enough teachers in schools or not. The fact is that there are not enough teachers in schools.
It's a fact.
Yes.
Look where we want to head to. That we want to argue that Mboko is saying there are enough teachers. When I'm the person who is pushing for employment of teachers, so are we not losing? We cannot come here
this morning came up yesterday
to argue that there are not enough classes and infrastructure.
And that was spoken about in KCPE results.
This is what is not there, and that's what we are fighting.
And we know it.
Okay.
What we were addressing is CBC. So let's deal with CBC as a curriculum and then deal with the challenges that are likely to face implementation of CBC. That's the kind of debate I wake up in the morning to come and discuss, not to argue whether there are enough teachers in the rural primary or in Matsuri. They are not there. And we are asking the government to employ not 5,000, but 100,000.
Okay, that was one aspect of the conversation that was brought up by the CS Magoa. The other one was this 100% transition. Is that where the problem is, Omboko, in your view? Because then it means we are transiting 1.2 million people into school. Should we have stayed with the previous system whereby if you don't get the marks, you stay home? Other avenues?
No. You see, the 100 transition is courtesy of the Constitution. We made the law with the late Mutula Kilonzo, and we agreed that basic education is defined in a certain way. The definition of basic education includes the 100 transition. So if we don't 100% transit, we shall be going against the Constitution of Kenya.
But in hindsight,
no, let me deal with it first. Because if you don't do that, you'll be taken to court. And the courts can rule either way. I'm not sure. I'm not a judge. So it's very important that we transit students. But let me leave the Constitution and talk as Omboko Melemba. Don't you think it's good for every student to transit? Why were we leaving some students just out of school after standard 7? Remember, I'm old school myself. I'm a CP guy. I'm not a KCPE guy. We were just leaving a chunk of many students out to nowhere, and nobody will know where they are going to. But now with 100% transition, how many times when we shall be seeing the KCSE results, you'll hear that this student entered at the entry behavior of 190 marks, or what you call a very low marks of 210, but now exiting with a C+. You know, that's a celebration, brother. These are the people whom we are actually gathering, whom we used to leave out, and now moving forward and making sure that they also get into the system. So 100% transition is good, but 100% transition must go alongside a budgetary allocation of teachers, of infrastructure, of implements, and every other material that is required in schooling. So what do? We face the challenge. The challenge is that more funding for the education sector.
All right, Janet?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you know where my heart lies is in 100% transition. There is no child that I would rather they stay home. I would rather they all come to school and then we deal with the challenges, you know, at the school level. But then while at that, I would really want to recommend to the CS two things that could really help the 100% transition. We always argue, sit here and say government should allocate more and so on. But again, I'm also guided by the realities that between now and the time children go to secondary school, there might be no other resources, maybe, that can be pushed to schools because it's a budget process and so on and so forth. But there are a few things that especially having been a CEC for education in Nairobi, I have seen how there are some bottlenecks that hinder parents from taking their children to school. And the day schooling is a very critical aspect, Trevor, because the bulk of children in this country attend day schools. That is where a lot of the attention should be given to. Now, there's policy of the Ministry of Education that says we have free day secondary school. I would really wish that the minister follows up to just ensure that the free day secondary school policy is adhered to the latter.
That is really free.
We at this moment, I can tell you, Trevor, there is a family that doesn't have 100 shillings today, and they have a child that sat for KCPE, and that child needs to go to school. When you are speaking about education, I know some parents are looking at me and saying, you gave birth, so it is your responsibility to take your child to school. When you're talking about public policy, public policy is for everybody. And public policy and government targets the poorest of the poor. It is government's responsibility to make sure that that parent that doesn't have 100 shillings right now is protected, because as Omboko says, it is our law that guarantees every child a right to basic education. And basic education is defined right from early childhood all the way to Form 4, as at now. So there are those things that maybe the Ministry of Education, and we have so many education officials, they could follow up so that all these charges that are charged to parents really are eradicated. And the next point is in our uniform policy. And I say this because I would really probably want Mboko to give a comment there. Trevor, in this country, uniform is costing 36,000 Kenya shillings. Beautiful. I do not know whether ni ya kwenda kwa jeshi ama ni ya kwenda wapi. And these children you're asking to buy, and I can give examples. We have St. George's right behind us here. If you want to buy uniform for St. George's Secondary School, you will have to go to a shop in Donholm, and that is where you will find the apparel, and it is costing parents up to 29,000 Kenya shillings. Parents are, it's a helpless situation. And I wonder, why can't a parent just buy a shirt? Why can't a parent just buy a skirt and the shoes that you are using in primary school? Because if uniform is going to hinder you from accessing a school, I am telling you, Trevor, we do not need that piece of uniform. And these are things that the CS can crack the whip on, because when we saw Dr. Matiang'i crack the whip on textbooks, which was a very big problem. The other aspect that is remaining is that aspect of uniform. So that you walk into a secondary school and you find school outfitters there, parents are being sold for there, you're supposed to buy a mattress from the parents are saying, can we be let to buy mattresses here in the shop so that I go and bargain? I tell them, please give the mattress to me, I have 200 shillings, I will be bringing the rest. Those are the situations of our parents right now. And some of the problems you hear people complaining about government is not like education is very expensive. Trevor, in the year 2013, we had secondary schools charging all the way up to, from 100,000, 80,000. But the government listened, and they formed a task force that brought school fees to 53,000. Me, have seen a lot of goodwill from government, but there are cartels. And those cartels, you cannot blame them on the president. You can only blame them on the implementers of government policy at the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education should crack the whip. Why do we buy uniform in schools, for example? Why should we buy uniform in schools? We went to school. When I went to school, my father did not buy uniform in any school. He was sent for a piece of brown skirt, and he was told, make it an A-shaped skirt. Why don't we do that? Because we're even killing the local tailors. Local tailors don't make uniform anymore because some of them are even importing from China because it's cheap and cost effective. So you go to school outfitters, visit school outfitters when schools are opening. Parents are traumatized. Thousands of parents queuing there because all the schools in this country have decided to give contract to school outfitters and so many others. It is not nice, Trevor. And when we are speaking about 100% transition, we do not only want to concentrate on school fees. We want to concentrate on what else. Why does a school require a child to come interfees? Why are you asking a child to report interfees? That child does not eat food at home. They only eat one meal. Why do you require them to go to Bata to buy a shoe worth 2,700 shillings? Why are we doing this? Why can't the Ministry of Education really, in the spirit of 100% transition, completely ban the purchase of uniform in school? I am sure if the minister does that, the parents of this country will breathe in relief. And the next thing, there are these people called the boards of management of schools, and we have spoken about this. That your child has been admitted to Alliance does not mean because you have money, you go and lock every other person from Alliance High School so that you want your children to eat sausage, you want your children to eat what? If you want that, take your children to private schools. There are so many out here. Can we let public schools really serve the public of this country, so that we are not locking out people. These complaints you hear, parents talking about the cost of education. I know the government has made considerable steps, and the only thing we are seeing is lack of discipline and lack of fidelity in the implementation of policy of ministry.
It's just, what do you think about the transition, the 100% transition? In hindsight, was it a good idea or bad idea?
Of course, as a lawyer, I will say that the basic education and right to basic education presumes from ECD up to Form 4. But that is law in books. That the philosophy of law, we have law in books and we have law in action. So in books, we have 100% transition, but in action, we need to rethink the idea of 100% transition as a country. We are very keen to speak about 100% transition during KCPE, but no one bothers to talk about 100% transition after KCSE. These fellas will be allowed to move to secondary schools with 80 marks out of 500. But no one will monitor them between Form 1 and Form 4. But because Kenya is a society based on performance, these fellas will chicken out in Form 1 or Form 2 or Form 3. We're going to lose 20% of these people transiting between Form 1 and Form 4. Sincerely speaking, we agree that some students have scored very low marks because of the circumstances, people who sat KCPE in Marakwet when there were guns all over, people who sat KCPE in villages in Turkana without a meal for 3 days, and that would have contributed. What about a person who sat KCPE under very usual and friendly circumstances and had 77 marks out of 500? Is he going to fully benefit from secondary education? Is there something useful that these people can do that can be structured in our system beyond class 8? And our education system is very friendly. You do not have to go the whole way. We've been told by stakeholders that after class 8, you can go take some craft courses and then proceed and go up to the highest level of education. That, however, should not be encouraged to exclude students who otherwise will wish to proceed to secondary and do well. I once taught a boy at St. Peter's Boys High School who had 253 marks in KCPE, but he ended up scoring an A- and he was among the top students just because at Isongo Primary, where he was schooling, he was an orphan going through very difficult circumstances. So this 100% transition needs to be implemented, but strategically. We do not have to force everyone who has done class 8 to proceed, even when their ability and wish is in doubt.
Okay.
Let me capture something about the history of 100% transition.
Yes.
You know, it would look like we are talking about 100% transition for students in class 8 as a very new magic. No. Usually, governments are more interested in basic education, the lowest education. Why? If you go to the Todarian model, the basic education benefits the government more than it benefits the individual. Higher education will benefit the individual more than it will benefit the government. So the government is interested in this basic, the lowest level, the minimum that every citizen should have acquired in a particular time and period. The early times, an acquisition of even class 5 was very important, and it can be compared to what you are now calling 100% transition for class 8. And that class was called intermediate. Hey, you guys. I know we are young enough not to remember these things, but there was a class called intermediate. If you talk to the old people, they'll tell you, no, me, I went through intermediate. The government struggled, even the colonial government, especially the government after colonialism, struggled to make sure that everybody goes to about intermediate. But because the quality and needs are improving, it has been moved to KCPE level, class 8, that everybody must go to secondary, and then everybody must actually finish secondary. So we are now fixing it at Form 4. We are expecting that in the next 5 years, moving on forward, every Kenyan, if you meet any Kenyan, the lowest you imagine, even in the village, just married in the local circumstances, you know, me, I come from the village, should have been a Form 4 leaver. Those are the tenets. Those are the issues that governments look at. So it is very good. That is, it has been upgraded from the lowest level of intermediate. It has gone to KCPE level, and now it's being moved to Form 4 level. So it is a good thing, and it's the business. Hey, you guys, it's the business of government to provide this education, not the business of the individual. if the individual wants to survive with much higher education of becoming a doctor or whatever, that's now individual, for the individual to pay. So therefore, I want to say that this is very good for this particular country and must be supported.
Okay.
What Ma'am here was talking about, Janet, is those factors that hinder access to basic education. And she has mentioned, flagged out uniform. She has flagged out other extra payments and many other things. When you look at the education goals, the first goal you go for is access. You don't go for quality first. Let guys access education.
Come. Everybody come.
So she is actually modeling argument to say that let every Kenyan access education. And indeed, she's right. We must make them access before we go for the quality that they have accessed. And this is very good. So therefore, if uniform is a hindrance to access to education, I want to bluntly say, because I'm a person who maybe in the next 15 years, I could be the president of this country, that if uniform is a hindrance to access to education, let uniform be removed. Because we want access to education. Or let it be modeled in a way that is cheap enough to make every Kenyan student access uniform. Because we were never going to school because we are uniformed here, you guys. We were going to school to get education, not to have the high quality uniform or material that we are talking about. So not only uniform. Look at, in 1998, when people were debating about the Education Act on whether to remove the cane or not, had stopped caning students. And I was at Moi Girls Vocoli. My contemporaries can speak on this. And I stopped caning students. And I told people that caning will finally end. I can strongly tell you here that uniform will finally be removed. And it needs to be removed. There's no any correlation between uniform and learning. I know what the other argument has it, that you know these students will disappear in the streets, you know this child will not be known as a child. But those are things that countries like America have overcome. A student is a student, you don't need to be... Why did uniform come in place in the first place? It was during the colonial period and Africans themselves did not believe in education. So it was very important to identify those who are going to the dormitories, as they were called during those particular days, the schools, so that they are protected. But currently, everybody is protecting his child to go to school and even attempting to steal exam whenever he gets a chance. So education is so valued that nobody will not take his student to school because of lack of uniform. I think those are some of the issues I think
let's discuss further.
But let me finish by saying, this is important, that not only uniform, but the hidden costs that hinder access to education.
Let's discuss this issue of uniform, Janet. And there are many aspects that goes into it. First of all, it's a security issue because when students are there, you can see who's a student, who's not a student, number one. Number two, it also will then exacerbate the difference in the social hierarchy. Your son will go to school in a three-piece, and then somebody else who doesn't have a T-shirt, that's all they have, wouldn't that then clearly demarcate the difference in the social status, which makes it even worse at a time, especially when there's mental health issues?
Absolutely. And for the most radical, they will say that we remove uniform. For the most radical, they will say we remove uniform because if uniform stops a child from accessing school, we absolutely don't need it. Remember, we are trying to remove all barriers. But we are not there yet. So we are saying, can we define what do we need as uniform? What do we need as uniform? We need a shirt, we need a pair of trousers or a pair of skirts, or a skirt and a sweater. And socks and shoes. That's the only thing. We keep it at bare minimum. Let me tell you what obtains currently. You have got the shirt. It must have a logo of the school. And for a shirt to have a logo, the difference between a shirt that doesn't have a logo and one that has a logo, the one that doesn't have a logo is 200 bob in Gikomba. I'm speaking for the majority of parents, not only in Nairobi, but I know across the country. The one that has a logo to be bought in school is 900 and 1,000 bob. That is how I want you to situate yourself, that we have exaggerated this thing called uniform, that it is a school that determines for you that you must even have a scarf. Let me ask you in Kisumu boys, what do you need a scarf for? What do you need a tunic? They have this other small sweater that you put on inside, and then there is the jacket. There's something else called a fleece jacket, and the fleece jacket goes for 3,500. You know, there's a lot of exaggeration. and there are opportunities of making money. So what we are saying is that we need uniform, really, because of the factors that you are saying. But can we keep it at minimum? And while we're keeping it at minimum, can we remove this intermediary between the parent and the uniform? Can the parent be told that it is blue?
Yeah.
Go source for a blue uniform from a tailor, go source for a shirt, go source for a sweater, and report in school dressed this way.
Yeah.
I think that way, Trevor, and I'm telling you this issue of uniform, I'll get you the fee structures because I know they're almost releasing the fee structures. I can bet you the uniform is more expensive than the first term fees. We do not need that, and that is where the burden and the parents are complaining, because even if the government has said it costs 53,000 to educate a child in a national school, divide that by 3. You need 20,000. If you are armed with a check of 20,000, you will go to school in first term. But how about uniform that is 36,000 and all these requirements? Why does a child need 3 pairs of shoes? A child that went to school in the tuk-tuks, you know these floaters.
Yeah.
That child for 8 years had floaters. Why do they overnight need tafis? I think we really also need to accommodate, much as we want everyone to be the same as who? What population are we dealing with so that we all want to have tafis? Which child in this country needs those tafis? And that's where we are losing it. And that's why we are saying we will get to a point where we will say uniform is not necessary. Okay. If uniform will bar children from accessing school, then we do not need uniform at all.
All right.
Yes, to weigh in on uniform, Trevor, I want to disagree with my 2 seniors here. And just a simple demonstration. Why we put on suits, what I put on a suit when you invited me here, I knew that Janet will be here and will be expensively dressed. So I was trying to catch up with her in terms of dressing so that I don't get a backlash. And this is likely to happen in our schools. In fact, it is going to be more expensive to parents when we don't have uniforms in schools than when we have uniforms. Janet's daughter, Omboko's son, will get up one day and say, Baba, you are an MP. I want a 3-piece suit. So Omboko's son comes with a 3-piece. A son of a farmer from Habondi comes with some tatters. We cannot have a school where children choose costumes to come with in school. I agree with them that we must control the cost of the school uniform. Actually, if it is properly controlled and the cartels in the uniform industry eliminated, the school uniforms is the cheapest mode of dressing of our children.
That's what
we cannot go to the other costumes that come with what you have.
No.
Some people will come in tatters. Some will be dressed like the things they see on the... We are living in a very socially challenged society. People will come without dressing properly. It will be a case of indiscipline. So uniforms are good. Let us eliminate cartels. And as Janet says, these cartels that are at a higher level, national schools, extra-county schools, schools in the village have uniforms costing about 800 shillings, 1,000 shillings. And it's a very big business, by the way. And Janet must include that it's all the way from Jogo. It's all the way from Jogo because it is controlled. It's like the traffic police. They collect bribes on the road in Huisero and they come all the way to the traffic headquarters. The same uniform cartels collect money from the people in the villages and it comes all the way to go. So we must crack the whip right from Jogo House, coming to principals and going to these other players. Uniform is expensive, is unnecessarily expensive. We can have cheaper uniforms.
All right.
So I think,
Let's get into... I think this is now a closed topic in terms of uniform. Let's now get into going forward. This is a unique year where there's another academic year starting in May. There's a double intake coming up in 2023. What must the government do now as we head into 2023 in preparation for this double intake that's coming?
Very well. I think we are through with the uniform, and I think the moderated version is that a discourse needs to be done about the uniform in terms of reducing the cost of uniform. Even if you don't remove it completely. But I think now moving forward, there is a big challenge for government. And what should be done is actually to increase funding for schools. Because as moving forward, we are having another exams for KCPE towards the end of the year. And then we are also having the other exam for Form 4s. And then after which we shall now go to the normal cycle of beginning our terms in January and progressing. And then there's the challenge of CBC, which Wakili had spoken about, and very well so, which requires infrastructure, which requires teachers, and which requires also other infrastructure material that are within the laboratories and educational materials. So moving forward, funding for the education sector must be a wake-up call for us in Parliament. And the budget that has been is there currently has very little for infrastructure in schools, apart from the classes that are being built for CBC, and which are not enough, like I said earlier, and it doesn't require an argument. There's need to even have more classes constructed in our schools. There's need for more laboratories and other materials in our schools, and therefore we are just hoping that the members of Parliament who will be able to go to succeed to be in Parliament should allocate, and the government that will come in power should be able to allocate enough money for the school sector so that everything else can be done to sustain where we headed to.
Yeah. Janet, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, the first, of course, the topmost priority is to just urge government to increase funding to education. I know the government of Kenya has done well in terms of meeting all the thresholds international that are set for spending in education. They have done well, but we're still saying that we can still do more, increase funding to education. The other aspect is about the government regulating, and especially the Ministry of Education. And I'm happy because Omko sits in the Education Committee of Parliament, regulating the other funds that can support the 100% transition. I mean CDF, for example. There is absolutely no reason as to why CDF should probably be spent to buy a bus, for example. That money can go, a long way in supporting maybe construction of classrooms or even equipping of classrooms.
Even just students, some of them will still be at home because of lack of school.
I talk like this. I talk like this because I know in Kasarani there is a public primary school with an 8 million bus that was bought using CDF. Outside there, it doesn't have a driver, doesn't have insurance, it's just there. And children are sitting, right in front here. They have no desks. So really looking at our expenditure also and just insisting on discipline and prudence in the way we spend public funds. And finally also, I know parents have really supported the Ministry of Education. There is quite a lot of contribution that the parents have made. And until 2014, when government regulated and said parents should be let to deal with one project at a time because the projects were really exaggerating school fees, I would want government to go a step further in requiring that such projects be those projects that have a bearing on learning. Yeah. There is no way you would be asking parents to construct a church in school. I mean, really, that is not the core business of a learning institution. I have nothing against God, but I think really it's a matter of common sense that you cannot be calling us for Harambee that you are doing a 10 million church, for example. Yes, there are churches.
Could you come clear that you don't want churches? Eh?
No, it's not about wanting churches. Don't blow things out of proportion.
Oh, thank you.
But you cannot be in a school that does not have sufficient learning facilities, and you're calling us for a fundraiser to build this big worship. Really, what am I saying? I'm saying that even the principals of schools should also understand that parents are going through difficult times. So if all of us could join hands together and we just focus thoroughly on ensuring that we invest in those projects that have got a bearing in learning, all of us could really be, in a safe place. Okay. And I know, he's laughing like this because he knows there are projects, very big churches in schools that are stalled. And then
what have churches done?
She's made a point.
When I woke up this morning, I was praying to God. And,
I did
I just find somebody who is saying that churches
No, that does not stop you from being candid. That does not stop you from being candid. Don't get this one wrong. And do not blackmail me. The idea is we have to keep our focus.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. What should the government do now?
I want to agree with Janet first and protect her. Is in terms of priorities.
Yes.
Boko, you prayed in your house, not in church. Well, there is no fame in going for a 10,000-seater church when you have a 45 capacity class. We can even use those churches as classrooms at times, and we used to use them. That's the essence of the story. Well, let me give my way forward. I have withdrawn.
I'll give you a
I'm not very comfortable with the trend that the discussion is taking.
I'll give you
the best example we can use for not appropriating money for classes would be a church. We have many other examples. I loved the bus. Thank you. That's my point of order.
Thank you. I'm saved for the information. So the way forward, Trevor, we need to rethink our strategies as a country and as stakeholders in this tech sector. One, is look at what is going to happen between May and October, November. We are going to have 2 national examinations. We are going to implement a curriculum that is designed to be implemented in 1 year, just in a period of 6 to 7 months between May and October. And then we shall be asking, why have our children performed so poorly? When KICD told us, implement this within 1 year. And then the ministry tells us, here are the term dates. Can we have proper coordination? Number 2 is we need to rethink. And I agree with Omboko and Janet that CBC is a good idea, and it aids at that. How practical it is another fact of discussion. Why can't we come together, stakeholders, have a national conversation now that we are sitting on a time bomb going to January? What can we do? And the solutions might be as simple as the Trump suggestions. If students are leaving Kwesero Primary in class 6 to go to other schools in grade 7, we have a class 7 in that Kwesero. Why can you retain them there and then call it grade 7 and apportion teachers to teach it until that time when we shall have enough structures to go to secondary schools? We cannot employ 100,000 teachers between now and January. It's an impossibility because of the exchequer. We cannot build enough classrooms between now and January because governments, we've been saying increase funding. From the time I knew Janet, she has been talking about government increase funding. It's now about the 10th year. The government will not increase funding in next year just because she has become a member of parliament for Kasarani. Therefore, we need to think our strategies and solve our problem. And we are sitting on a time bomb as we speak now in this sector. All right.
Let me bring up the feedback and then take closing remarks from my guests on this conversation. It is not going to end anytime soon because this is a continuous conversation on education. Let's bring that up at Trevor Mbidi at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. We have quite a number of them coming through. We'd like to hear from you. And also, there are quite a number of you who sent in their congratulatory messages to all the candidates who sat the KCPE exams and was giving them the best wishes despite their score, because all the 1.2 million of them will still cross over to secondary school as well. But